For 4 long years, Duke waited. Through scorching summers, freezing winters, and endless storms, he remained sitting in the same spot by an old gas station, his eyes fixed on the road, hoping for someone who never returned. The German shepherd, once a loyal companion, became a ghost of the past, a mystery that no one could solve. People tried to help him, but Duke refused to leave. He waited. But for what, or for who? Then one morning, something unbelievable happened, a single moment that would change everything. The miracle that brought Duke's story full circle. Stay with me until the end, because this will restore your faith in loyalty, love, and destiny. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty highway, its warmth slowly burning away the thin mist that clung to the pavement. The road was quiet, save for the occasional passing car. Yet there he was, like always, a German shepherd sitting near the old gas station, his fur dusty and unkempt, his eyes locked on the stretch of road ahead. He didn't move much, barely acknowledging the people who passed by. He simply waited. For 4 years, Duke had made this spot his home. At first, no one knew where he had come from. Truck drivers, commuters, and the few remaining residents of the small town noticed him, but no one had the heart to chase him away. They tried to feed him, and sometimes he would eat, but only after they left. If anyone got too close, he'd stand, walk a few feet away, and sit down again. Never aggressive, never barking, never causing trouble. He just waited. Martha Reynolds, the owner of the local diner, had been one of the first to take an interest in Duke. At 56, with short gray hair, kind but sharp eyes, Martha made it a point to stop by the gas station every morning before opening her shop. She'd leave food near the old fuel pumps. "Poor thing," she'd say. "He's waiting for someone. I don't know who, but I hope they come back." Duke survived brutal winters and scorching summers, always returning to the same spot. On quiet nights, people could hear him whimper softly, a lonely, heartbreaking sound that no one could ignore. Every now and then someone would try to take him in. A trucker once tried to coax him into his rig. A young woman even brought a leash, hoping to lead him away. But Duke never left. The moment anyone tried, he would pull away, run a few feet, and sit back down, eyes fixed on the horizon, as if waiting for someone who promised to return. It was a cold autumn morning when Noah Patterson, a 32-year-old investigative journalist, first noticed Duke. He had driven through the town countless times before, always heading to his next assignment. He had seen the dog sitting by the gas station, but had never paid much attention. Until today. Something about Duke's posture, the silent patience in his eyes, made Noah slow down. He pulled into the gas station, sat in his car, and watched. The dog was completely still, focused, waiting. Curiosity got the best of Noah, and he walked into Martha's diner. The scent of fresh coffee and bacon filled the air as a few regulars chatted at the counter. Martha glanced up from behind the counter, offering a warm smile. "Coffee?" Noah nodded. "Yes, please. And can I ask you something?" Martha poured his coffee, then leaned against the counter. "You're going to ask about the dog, aren't you?" Noah raised an eyebrow. "So it's not just me," Martha chuckled. "Honey, that dog's been sitting out there for 4 years. You're a little late to the mystery." 4 years? Waiting for what? Noah frowned. "That's the thing," she sighed. "No one really knows. Some folks think he belonged to a trucker who used to stop here. Others think he got lost and never found his way home. But me—" Martha paused, looking out the window at Duke, still sitting by the gas station. "I think he's waiting for his family." Noah turned back to look at the dog. His mind raced. He had covered countless human interest stories, missing persons, survival tales, even reunions between lost pets and owners. But this was different. Noah pulled out his phone and opened his investigative notes app. There was a story here, and he was going to find out the truth. 4 years ago, Duke had a home. He wasn't a stray. He wasn't lost. He was loved. Lucas Carter, just 10 years old at the time, had grown up with Duke. From the moment his parents brought the tiny German Shepherd puppy home, the two were inseparable. Lucas would wake up early just to greet Duke, the dog sleeping at the foot of his bed. He followed Lucas to the kitchen every morning, waiting eagerly by the door in the afternoon when Lucas returned from school. Emily Carter, Lucas's mom, always said, "I don't know who's more excited, Lucas to see Duke or Duke to see Lucas." But everything changed one fateful night. A storm had rolled in, bringing heavy rain and wind that made the road slick and dangerous. The Carter family was driving home from a weekend trip. Cautiously, Duke stepped out. His paw touched the pavement as if he were walking on unfamiliar ground. His body remained tense, his ears flicking at every sound. The wind rustled the trees, and he turned his head sharply. A passing car made his tail lower. He was waiting for something to go wrong. Inside, Lucas led Duke to his old dog bed in the corner of the living room. "It's yours, buddy," he said, patting the soft cushion. Duke sniffed it but didn't lay down. Instead, he paced. His tail was low, his body stiff. The warmth of the house, the smells, the voices, it was all too much. Emily kneeled, reaching out a hand. "You're home now," she whispered. Duke flinched. Lucas saw it, the way Duke's muscles tensed, the way his eyes darted toward the door as if planning an escape. Lucas's chest tightened. Duke had spent 4 years outside in the cold and rain, surviving on his own. Did he even remember what home felt like? The first few nights were the hardest. Duke refused to sleep inside. Lucas tried everything. He laid out blankets, left food near his bed, even slept on the floor beside him. But no matter what, Duke wouldn't settle down. Instead, he curled up near the back door, staring at it as if still waiting for something, a family that had left him behind or a past that no longer existed. Lucas lay awake, watching him. He wanted to reach out and comfort him, but how do you fix a heart that has been waiting in silence for 4 years? So he gave Duke what he had given him, time. The breakthrough came on a cold morning a week later. Lucas woke up early, rubbing the sleep from his eyes as he made his way downstairs. When he reached the living room, he froze. Duke was not by the door. He was curled up on his dog bed. Lucas didn't move, didn't breathe. The German Shepherd was resting. His body was finally relaxed, his breathing slow and steady. Lucas's heart swelled. It wasn't much, but it was something. He grabbed his phone and sent a text to his mom, who was still upstairs. "Mom, he's sleeping on his bed." Seconds later, her reply came, "Don't wake him. Let him feel safe." Lucas set his phone down and sat on the floor a few feet away, watching Duke sleep in his home for the first time in 4 years. That night, Lucas lay on the couch, flipping through his old photo album. The pictures of Duke as a puppy made him smile. Then he felt movement beside him. He turned his head, and his heart nearly stopped. Duke was standing next to him, staring at him. Lucas didn't dare move. Then, slowly, cautiously, Duke placed his head on Lucas's lap. Lucas's eyes burned as he stroked the dog's fur. "You remember me, don't you?" he whispered. Duke let out a soft breath, and for the first time since coming home, he wagged his tail. Duke had come a long way in the weeks since his return. He had started eating regularly, sleeping inside, and even following Lucas around the house. He no longer flinched when Emily reached out to pet him. He wagged his tail more, but there were still moments of hesitation. Every time someone opened the back door, Duke's ears perked, his muscles tensed, and for a split second it looked like he was thinking about running. Lucas noticed it every time. His parents said it would take time, that Duke had spent so long waiting to be reunited that he wasn't sure how to stop. Lucas wasn't worried about time. He was worried about what would happen if Duke ever got the chance to leave. He would find out soon enough. The afternoon was quiet and crisp, the sky painted in soft shades of gold and blue. Lucas had just gotten home from school and dropped his backpack near the door. Duke greeted him, his tail giving a small wag. Lucas knelt down to scratch behind his ears. "You want to go outside, buddy?" Duke tilted his head. Lucas smiled. "Come on, let's try it." He had been waiting for this moment for weeks. They had kept Duke on a leash whenever he was outside, making sure he wouldn't panic and bolt. But today Lucas wanted to see if Duke could finally trust that this was his home. He walked to the back door and slowly opened it. Duke stepped forward, hesitant at first, sniffing the air. Lucas stepped onto the porch, watching carefully. "Go on." Duke's ears twitched, his paws touched the grass. He took a few cautious steps forward, looking around the backyard. Then a loud crash echoed through the neighborhood. Fireworks. Duke froze. His entire body went stiff, his ears pinned back, his tail lowered. Another explosion of sound. Before Lucas could react, Duke turned and ran. Lucas sprinted after him. Duke, the dog, was already halfway across the yard, heading for the open gate. Lucas's heart pounded. He should have closed it. His legs burned as he pushed himself faster, but Duke was quicker. For the first time in weeks, Duke's instincts took over. The sound of fireworks, the open space, the panic. His body remembered survival. He slipped through the gate and onto the sidewalk. Lucas's voice broke as he shouted, "Duke, wait!" The dog skidded to a stop. For a long, breathless second, he stood at the edge of the street. Lucas saw the conflict in his eyes. 4 years of waiting. 4 years of looking for something that had been lost. 4 years of believing that if he left, maybe he would find what he had been searching for. Lucas's voice was desperate. "Don't go." Duke looked back at him, and then he made his choice. He turned around. Lucas exhaled sharply, his hands shaking as he crouched down. "It's okay, buddy. I'm right here." Duke took one step toward him, then another. And then, with a soft whimper, he pressed his head into Lucas's chest. Lucas wrapped his arms around him, his voice thick. "You're home." Duke's tail gave a small wag. For the first time, he truly believed it. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the Carters' backyard. The days had started to get shorter, but Duke's journey toward healing had just begun. He wasn't the same dog that had walked into their home weeks ago. Duke had changed, not just in the way he behaved, but in the way he looked at the world now. Differently. Less fearful. Less guarded. Lucas stood at the edge of the yard, watching Duke run. The dog's form was a blur of brown and black, his tail held high as he sprinted across the grass. No hesitation, no signs of doubt. Duke was finally letting himself be free. For the past month, Duke had spent more time outside, running freely in the backyard. His pace was steady and relaxed. Emily had been so worried about letting him go outside without the leash, but Lucas insisted. He knew that Duke needed to trust again, needed to know he wasn't trapped. It was a slow process, but each day Duke grew more comfortable. The fireworks incident was a setback, but it had also been a turning point. Duke realized for the first time that it was okay to be here, to stay. "Hey, Duke!" Lucas shouted, waving his arms. Duke came to an immediate stop, turning to face Lucas with a sparkle of pure joy in his eyes. He ran back, bounding toward Lucas like he had never been away. When Duke reached him, he skidded to a stop and jumped up, placing his front paws on Lucas's chest. Lucas laughed, steadying himself, as Duke licked his face, his tail wagging furiously. "You're a good boy, aren't you?" Lucas said through his laughter, his voice thick with emotion. Duke barked once, a deep, joyful sound, before hopping down and running in a circle around him. It was his new game, chasing Lucas, then pausing as if to say, "Catch me if you can." Lucas couldn't help but smile. This wasn't the same dog that had been lost and alone in the world for so long. This was Duke, the dog who had come home. Inside the house, Emily and Benjamin watched from the window, their faces soft with relief. The past month had been one of rebuilding, Not just Duke's trust, but their family's trust in the world, in each other. Emily looked at Benjamin, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think he remembers us?" Benjamin nodded, his eyes never leaving Duke. "I think he does." Lucas was still laughing, chasing Duke across the yard, his voice filled with the pure joy of the moment. Duke's running feet made a rhythmic sound as he dashed around Lucas. Emily saw the dog glancing back every time Lucas called his name. "Good boy," Emily whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. Benjamin reached out, squeezing her hand. "He's home." It wasn't just the family who had noticed the change in Duke. Martha from the diner had stopped by earlier that week, bringing Duke his favorite treats. She smiled as she handed them over to Lucas. "He looks good. He's finally starting to settle in." "Yeah," Lucas said, taking the treats. "It's like he knows he's safe now." The door creaked open behind them, and Emily stepped out onto the porch. "Dinner's ready," she called. Duke paused mid-chase, his ears flicking at her voice. Without hesitation, he turned, trotting over to Emily with a wagging tail. Lucas followed, smiling as Duke sat patiently in front of Emily, waiting for his treat. Emily smiled at him, crouching down to pet him. "Good boy. It's time for dinner." Duke sat, his tail still wagging. His eyes were full of trust. He didn't bark or whine. He just sat there, content and calm, as if he understood that this was his home now. That evening, after dinner, the family sat together in the living room, Duke resting on the floor by their feet. It felt different. It felt complete. For the first time in 4 years, Duke had found his way back to them, not just physically, but emotionally. And as Lucas rested his head against the couch, Duke's head gently rested on his lap, just like the old days. "Good night, buddy," Lucas whispered, running his hand through the dog's fur. Duke's eyes closed as he drifted off to sleep, content. No longer a ghost of the past. He was home. For 4 long years, Duke waited through storms, loneliness, and the unknown. He never gave up. He believed his family would return, and in the end, his faith was not in vain. This story is more than just a reunion. It's about loyalty, love, and second chances. It's about the unbreakable bond between a dog and the people who love him. Not all lost dogs get a miracle like Duke, but his story proves that hope is never wasted. If this story touched your heart, help us spread the message. Adopt, don't shop. Never give up on an animal who trusts you. Share this story so more people believe in the power of loyalty. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more heartwarming stories like this. And if you ever see a dog waiting by the road, maybe, just maybe, they're waiting for someone who still loves them.